Greetings, my chess friends. I know I have often promised not to have the daily chess drama that you see, but I am infatuated with this story here today. There was, in the 1980s, a chess match on the way to the World Championship, which was decided by the spin of a roulette wheel at a casino. Unbelievable. If this happened today in the chess world, would implode. Incredible, no tiebreaker, and let's see this quite dramatic match, which seems to be only remembered by this incredible spin of the roulette wheel, literally at a casino. Okay, Smyslov, former world champion. There are a few other storylines going on here. Smyslov was the world champion in the 1950s. 25 years later, he qualifies through the interzonal and is here playing in the candidates quarterfinals. The winner of this entire tournament gets to play the world champion at the time, Karpov. Knight d2. Let's jump into the games. I like the setups with the fianchetto. Smyslov, again, 62 years old, I believe, with the white pieces, and obviously still quite sharp. Really, if you think about chess today in 2024, it's incredible to think of someone in their 60s qualifying for essentially the top 10 players in the world. I guess Vishy Anand, though, is not so far off. Okay, quite an exciting game. I've been clicking a little bit and just chatting, but an exciting game with the two pawns, sort of 2-2-2 type of structure for white. Both players have the two bishops. The knight looks a little peculiar here, although central can't really do much, but an interesting game, balanced nonetheless. A4, B4, and now there's, again, some dynamic nature here. The C4 square is available for a piece, perhaps this diagonal. Rook c1, bishop e6, e4. Basically daring black to capture that knight, and he does not, but had he taken the knight, of course we would capture, and a good central move. Probably this is still good for white with this really nice pass pawn. It's protected, white has the two bishops, and black chose not to go that route. Black did, however, offer a trade, which was declined. Bishop e3, knight a5, d4. And this game really picks up the excitement here. Queen g4. Okay, I was going a little quicker earlier because this game really explodes. And white is starting to get all the pieces gathering. I love the knights when they're ready to strike. Knight b3, just quite a bit out there, maybe dreaming of some threat of promotion or pressure here, but it just didn't really amount to much. King h1, maybe over-preparedness. Both players here now tuck their king away and get a question mark and a miss. Maybe a little bit of the hallmark of the old generation, a little extra safe. But some preparatory moves, and then comes e5. A strike in the center, and the game really explodes here. Bishop takes. You cannot play queen takes due to a nice, visually nice move, bishop b6, which hits the queen and rook. So bishop takes here, but the danger is real. This pin, queen staring at the king, you can feel knight g6 is looming. All very open position, and for the cost of one pawn, black is very happy. Look at this. Threatening checkmate, g6. Bishop takes g6. Look at all the pieces. Everything is under attack or pinned. This knight just chilling, but everything else is really threatening, defending, staring at this, staring at that. Knight, bishop, queen, kings are open. A wild position. And remember what's at stake. The nerves must be really nerves of steel to play these type of games. Bishop takes h7, an absolute haymaker in this total chaos. Can you imagine? 63-year-old man dropping brilliancies here on his opponent half his age. Knight g6, king g7 coming out the only move. Queen d7, my goodness. He blocks with the rook. What happens if king takes knight? So scary coming out this far. Queen g4 is checkmate. Queen, rook, bishop all coordinate nicely. So he really lured him out. Rook f7, rook takes f7, bishop takes, and then the knight comes back, picks up material. After that huge flurry, white is up a pawn. The black king has been just stripped of any cover, and I think it's really just a miracle this even gets to a bare endgame. Really, black surviving is pretty astounding. But it does get here to an endgame with queen and rook, black 2 pawns down, which is too much at this high level. The king wide open, and it's white with the initiative. Rook f1, rook f2, walking into a pin, but really not much to say about all this. White is just winning. So the c-pawn, slightly scary, but the king is just completely open. Rook f7 and queen c8. Here, black resigned game number 4. The first 3 games were drawn. This puts Smyslov ahead after 4 games of their 14-game match. So just a few notes here. If queen blocks, queen takes c3. I thought it was funny for a moment. Rook f8, I thought was losing to rook f5, but the queen is still guarding that. Had the queen been on another square, I think rook f5 is cross-pinned and everything, and actually winning. But not the case here. Let's move on to the next game, and this is game number 9. A number of draws in between. Smyslov still up 1 game after 8, and Hubner goes with the English defense. And this exchange. I'm always wary of capturing a knight early in the game, giving a bishop, but in this game, Smyslov is okay with it and really kind of closing the center here. Knight a6, not desirable, but it's a closed game. You can imagine that knight rerouting itself. Some interesting opening play, though. Here we are on move 13, 14, and now with this one, 14, 15 moves in, you can't castle anymore. Not an opening success for black. White is feeling good, comfortably castled, and I think just maybe queen f3, a little bit of a regroup here. Bishop e3 gets a mistake, but I couldn't imagine a more natural move. c4. And here's actually where white starts to kind of positionally take over, I think, in this moment. Bishop takes, and h5. Really nice moment here. Recognizing king h7 walks into line of the bishop. You need to be noticing these things when there's pins. Pins happen by accident sometimes. But this moment really, maybe, I don't think a miss here. So this pawn is actually hanging. I know your eyes are telling you it's not, but your brain should say it is, because you can take this. Knight takes, but queen takes. And taking here is not allowed. So, of course, he saw that. These are super strong players. And rook a c1 first, which is a tempo move. You hit the knight. So, almost gaining another move. Then he takes on h5. C takes d5. And I do want to point out at this moment that Hubner is the higher-rated player. Smyslov was maybe written off a bit as the past generation. Remember, 25 years ago was the world champion. This would literally be tantamount to Kasparov coming back today. That's exactly the comparison. Of course, Kasparov even a greater champion than Smyslov, no disrespect. But that would be him coming back and making the candidates tournament. So it'd be incredible. What a story. Wow. So here's the game, though. Bishop takes c2. Not the best move, and I like the engine suggestion here. Queen h1. Very nice, but hey, a tough move to play. Maybe that queen h1 move would prevent this. Queen h3. d5. Again, very human moves. That's one thing I notice in this. The engine is pointing out this and that, but 1983 high-level chess roughly 40 years ago, you can feel just the natural plans. For example, bishop g4, very human idea. Queen takes pawn, and bishop g4 traps the queen. Really nice game, and Hubner levels the match. 9 games, okay, are done. 5 to go. By the way, best engine move here, rook f4. Can you imagine that move landing on the board? Okay, there were a series of draws, and of course the finale, what occurs at the end is incredible. But this draw is no lame duck finish. This is a real fight. Game 13 out of 14. Let's jump into this. Queen's Gambit accepted, and we just lose the queens on move 8. A so-called queenless middle game. And another tense position. I want to point out that these double pawns are not so bad. In fact, they can be very good when they control clumps of squares. They're all together. If this c-pawn were gone, doubled, isolated, terrible. If this g-pawn were gone, same thing. But when they're all connected, protected, it's a very sturdy construction. Okay. here we go. Both players developing rook f c1. That might look a little strange, but the battle is going to be on the queen side here. b3, a human move, preventing the knight's advance. Rook a3, and here white starts to realize that he is worse. Smyslov, 62 years old, realizing this other rook is coming. I am just going to start getting squeezed here. Maybe b3 was not such a good decision. And he fights back. The wily veteran. Here, a bit of a panicked move, but fighting back, not going quietly. 2 pawns for the piece. That construction, which looks so nice, is gone, plus a tempo, plus a rook to the 7th, and another pawn. 3 pawns now for Smyslov versus a minor piece, a knight, for Hubner. Which side would you prefer? Not easy to tell. And like I said, really, this has been a tense match. This is no easy draw. Engine prefers black, let's note, but that still makes it, I think, a very good practical decision. Rook c1 here is actually the mistake that throws away the advantage. We have a knight takes c8, rook takes a1, a trade, but really any move with this rook would have been an improvement. Rook e8, rook a8, just move the rook and retain a more control of the game with your pieces. The pieces for black can generate threats, make an attack, keep these pawns kind of frozen. When we start trading, getting closer to the real end game, these pawns actually start to become worth their weight in gold. Rook c1, endgame. More trades. Endgame. Now, of course, you can't take that. Rook takes bishop is checkmate. King f1 and king at e2. So we exchanged a pair of rooks and a pair of minor pieces, and white got 2 extra king moves in. And now these pawns are ready to roll. The rook and the bishop helping. That was all a terrible turn of events. Whereas you could have just moved your rook and kept all the pressure. Again, this knight, bishop, rook on the 7th rank, knight e4 is coming, maybe f4 one day. You could really feel black is kind of owning the key squares. And that's where the game turned, rook c1. Here we are, f4. King really needed to go to f8, it looks like. And more positive king moves. This is a little fancy footwork. We're threatening this bishop. And we get down here to 2 pawns for the knight. But again, we're at the very end where the pawns can really make a difference. They're not sneaking by where there's a lot of pieces on the board. Rooks go behind past pawns. Remember, here the knight tries to immediately make its presence felt. This move, I believe, is cutting off the king. Check. And again, threatening the pawns. You need to stay behind. This is another pawn in our pocket. Now a knight for just 1 pawn. And he plays Smyslov, the very best move, rook c7. Preventing the knight from coming in further and getting out of the way of his own a-pawn. Knight e6, rook c8. Another check and the sacrifice. Now it is black who potentially could press here. A little newer to chess, this is definitely a technical draw. 3 versus 2 when all the pawns are on the same side of the board. Had one of these black pawns been over here, black would have serious winning chances. But when they're all on the same side, essentially in order to make a passed pawn, to get one by, you're going to have to be exchanging the pawns. And 1 pawn extra with a rook versus a rook is a well-known draw. So you have to trade pawns, but you don't want to trade pawns because everyone knows how to draw with just 1 pawn. Let's see. Cutting off the king, but this is really a moot point. White is happy to exchange pawns. There's 1 pair. Check. And kind of the waiting game a little bit. High level. These guys aren't going to blunder or let anything go. This game ends in a draw right there. Final 14th game ended in a draw. And here is where the story really gets bizarre. Hubner leaves after the match is tied. 14 games. I played my 14 games. He leaves, presumably back to his home country, Germany, West Germany at the time. And he doesn't really ask questions. He just leaves. And then they were supposed to play some rapid playoff, presumably, or somehow break the tie. Someone has to keep going to play the next match. It's the candidates' matches. So the winner eventually of the bracket will play Karpov, but you need to have a winner. So Hubner left, and Smyslov doesn't know what to do. The arbiters don't know what to do. They go over to the casino across the street. They ask to spin the roulette wheel one time. And if it comes up black, the winner is Hubner. He moves on to candidates. If it comes up red, Smyslov advances. And they spin the wheel. Can you imagine the drama at that moment? Can you imagine if this were to happen today? An unfathomable finish, and even at that time, it garnered quite a bit of attention in the chess world. Articles written about it. Is this fair? They spin the wheel. Round and round the roulette wheel. You can hear it clicking. Green. Comes up 0, green. You couldn't write that any better. They have to spin again. Smyslov wins. 3, red is what came up. And he moves on to play the next match, the candidates semifinals, which he wins. Smyslov